It'd be really handy for me because I've been asked to slot in today because IT are not available. So it would really help because my notes otherwise wouldn't have a clue because Wi-Fi and me in communal areas haven't got any clue at all. No. So yes, please.
No problem. So I've pressed the recording button. Hello. I have to ask Christopher Thomas again. That was it.
I'll let him in.
And I've got a couple of slides as well that I will introduce at some point. And I'll try and take some notes out of this and make some sort of output for people as well. But this came about from Cardiff Community Housing Association. I don't think they're actually here today. They were asking about this subject, and I noticed that there was, we put it out on a TPAS member survey, and a lot of people came back saying, we don't have much experience of this, but we'd be interested in attending something. So I thought I'd bring this together today to have that discussion. And I'll introduce, can I just pull up something first? Never tell if this works. Will it work?
Yes.
Right, it just gives a bizarre non-screen, but anyway, I just wanted to say today, firstly, that, oh, my computer's given a pause. Your hosts today are obviously myself and David Lloyd, if these slides come up, yeah. So our details are there if you want to email or contact us afterwards. And I also I've got to say this every time, but I'd like to thank our sponsors, Wales and Western Pobble Group. Really, we wouldn't be able to run these type of free events. It makes a big difference to us. I also would like to introduce you in a minute to Emma and Rob. They're two people we asked to maybe start some of the discussion today about their experience. And I'll just stop that there for the moment, if I can. Before we get going, sorry about this. Some bits of Zoom aren't that handy. So that's the scene behind this. We believe there's lots of people interested in this subject. I think COVID has brought this along about digital inclusion, digital meetings like this, and we felt that it would be good to have that type of discussion. I've got some material later, but I thought first if I could maybe ask Emma to talk about her experience, maybe where she's been and where she's going as with regard to United Welsh.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks, you both and TPAS for inviting me along today. I think it's important to share our experiences so that people can learn from them. We certainly learn from them, and hopefully not make the same mistakes and build on that. Just a bit of background, really. We worked in partnership with Social Telecom. So I know Rob's here to tell you a little bit more about them. To basically pilot the provision of communal Wi-Fi in several new developments in Cardiff. And it was part really of a wider initiative to introduce more smart technologies into our properties, and just to review it and test it and see what we found really. My role is business improvement, so I'm not a tech bod, so please forgive me, I'm not here to give you a technical overview, but just to share what I found having reviewed the services that we've been receiving from Social Telecoms and the effect that's had on the tenants using it. So drivers for this included things like mitigation of fuel poverty, because we identified from installing communal Wi-Fi's and linking that up with smart boilers and other smart technologies would allow us to use data from that technology that we could analyse with the intent to improve household energy efficiency and to help use this with tenants to for them to understand how they can improve that energy efficiency themselves. It would also allow us then to improve our maintenance and asset management using the technologies through the smart boilers and smart technologies available. We were hoping to improve communication channels between United Welsh and tenants and its tenants. So the idea of introducing a digital channel of communication would provide more choice to our tenants and perhaps more convenience as well. And then obviously the customers having the freedom to become more digitally included, but at their own pace. So it wasn't our agenda, it was an opportunity for them to explore the technology for themselves, to see how they could use that for things that matter to them. It obviously provided, it was easy to use, it was secure, and non-restrictive in its manner as well. So people can use it in their homes, in the garden. It was, you know, it was something accessible. So the way in which it works, the provision of the internet is via social telecoms, as I've mentioned, but it's slightly different to a usual domestic approach with an individual supplier. The costs on Wi-Fi facilities to each dwelling is significantly less than standardised services. So the customers, the tenants have access to connect to a joint United Welsh residents network for free, which is controlled via a landing page that details the terms and conditions and whatnot. I'm sure Rob, and I'm hoping you're going to sort of give a bit more about how that works and whatnot. But the aim was to sign up all our new tenants to the new properties that we've developed to this service, and of the 35 tenants, only one person opted out, so we gave them that option to not participate if they didn't feel comfortable, obviously explaining what we were aiming to use the facility for. And then Social Telecoms, as a provider, monitor the use of the Wi-Fi, but they're not able to identify which of the customers the data is originating from, so it's not, you know, specifying any individuals or whatnot. The one development that used the smart boilers, which is wired to the communal Wi-Fi, allowed us to diagnose and monitor maintenance to boilers, the smart boiler, and it provided a desktop view for planners and office bound staff to monitor the boiler activity, and giving them the ability to review annual reports and monitor more detailed issues in relation to the boiler. But also it allowed operatives who were informed of any faults remotely, the opportunity to sort of talk to the tenant about what's going on, perhaps offering suggestions of how to fix it for themselves, but giving them a heads up really of what parts, if any, were required to fix the fault there as well before actually visiting. So obviously it was saving the association time and any inconvenience in terms of visits for the customer as well. The main thing for us is being able to walk through what that looks like with the tenant as well. So obviously it requires resource for United Welsh to make sure that the individual who has access to the Wi-Fi knows how to use it and what they can actually do, which raised a couple of questions for us as an association in terms of our infrastructure and what we do with our internal systems and how we communicate better to with tenants about some of our regular landlord services as well. So an example is rent collection, and you know, whereas before we might have been sending out letters, we would be using the portal, the splash page, and giving that that access for the tenant digitally there as well. So there's a few things obviously that still need attention, but as a starter we found the service to be a real success and people are using it, if not necessarily for communicating more with United Welsh, they're certainly using it to improve their own well-being, allowing them to be more connected with family and friends, certainly during this period. And we've noticed that in relation to the smart boilers as well, it's allowed us as an organisation to be more proactive in identifying issues and behaviours that we can address sooner rather than later. So the plan for us really now is to roll this out further. We need to go back to tenants and just discuss obviously the last 18 months that it's been installed, how it's worked for them, any sort of improvements they feel that we could make. But ultimately the idea is that we want to be installing this sort of technology in this facility for all new properties going forward. So that's a bit of a quick overview for me. I hope that was not too
No,
quick.
that's great. Could I
bit of
follow
everything.
up with a question or two?
Yes.
So in terms of the fuel poverty, have you actually so far shown people how they can use their save money and stuff? You've got some case studies or evidence of that working, yeah?
Yeah, it's limited, like I said, because we identified we needed to have more of an infrastructure around bringing people along with this, and the whole part of it is being able, the tenant, to feel involved and seeing that difference and those improvements. So we've recognised that as part of the pilot now, that they need to be informed and contacted at each stage as well. But they can see it for themselves. I mean, you know, they have access to the app themselves as well, so they can see the behaviours and the results of that for themselves.
Okay. And in terms of, you said it was a free service, is that something you've just absorbed as a project cost, or is it part of their service charges?
So this was for the pilot. We wanted to provide it as a free because obviously it was something that we were extracting information to improve our services, so it wouldn't feel right to be charging for that. But because the costs are so low, we are looking to offer this as an ongoing, you know, an option for them in the future, to pay for it as part of a service charge. But obviously if they don't want to do that, then they can opt out of doing that. That's absolutely fine.
Okay. So, well, as a group, as a scheme, service charge, or an individual?
It would probably be an individual one. I mean, this is something that our service charge team would need to look at in terms of the implications of that. But yeah, that's the next stage.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by service charges, so that's why I'm asking.
Oh yeah, service charge is a hot topic, isn't it, for everybody in housing?
Okay, sorry, I've been asking. Does anybody else want to ask any questions at this stage?
Emma, can I just ask, you mentioned it's 35 properties. Is it a scheme of flats, or a complex of new houses that you're using the in?
Yeah, so there were 3 separate developments. One was a converted house of 5 flats. I'm just bringing up the details now. The other was a scheme of 9 flats, and then the other was a development. So that was a mixture of 21 flats. Okay. And that was with the smart technology, that last one as well. So, so yeah, I mean, what we're looking to do at the moment is introduce it into our older person's accommodation, because obviously the schemes, it's a lot easier to contain. Blocks of flats it's a lot easier, but you know, the way that technology is advancing now, I can't see that it wouldn't be a problem on a new development site as well.
Okay. And I guess I got the same question really about when you talk about the fuel poverty, the boiler efficiency. I know, we all know, I've seen Havard's details before of, you know, the cost of going out to do a repair or something. If you can diagnose that from a operations centre, that's got to save, you know, a visit and you know, save you money, doesn't it, longer term as a provider. I assume someone's working through those numbers and.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, having somebody to analyse all that information is super important. But you mentioned that. It was interesting. I was talking to one of the operatives about the use of it, and they were actually on site, as it was coincidentally, and somebody shouted over the balcony, "I'm having issues with my boiler," and the operative was able to just log in on his phone, on his device, and say, actually do this at the next thing, and it was resolved in seconds, as opposed to, you know, what would normally happen from the office, arrange an appointment. You know, it's a long process, isn't it? So the fact that he was able just to give that advice right there and then, you know, was so beneficial for both parties. So yeah, I
guess the question though is that, and maybe that's a question for Rob, but maybe that type of technology could be provided without providing the telecoms, you know, or the Wi-Fi to people. You know, it's just having smart boilers, like we have smart meters, giving that data back, you know.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, they're 2 separate things, but for us, we were taking advantage of that service of the communal Wi-Fi in a different way. So yeah,
I agree with you totally. It's just, yeah, it could be done just purely.
And could I just ask about any concerns from residents or tenants around privacy or security issues? I don't understand the techie background of it, but if they're going through yourself, are they concerned about doing other things, such as like online banking through your Wi-Fi provision, or about what are the data you potentially as an organisation could monitor that they're using? Were any tenants concerned about that type of security?
No, not really. I mean, I think because we gave such a good introduction to what we were doing in terms of the pilot and what information we would be provided with. I mean, like I said, Social Telecoms provide the report, so I would imagine Rob would be able to elaborate a little bit more on that. But we were able to reassure them that, you know, they can opt out at any time as well. It wasn't that they were, you know, compulsory. It wasn't a compulsory service. They can opt out, but it's the same that you would, you know, in terms of regular broadband anyway. But for us, it's minimal what we can see, and it's not related back to any individual anyway. So it's you know, an overview of the scheme that it's actually installed in that we see.
Yes, so that new development is in Rumney, isn't it? And, that opportunity came about. I was actually at an exhibition and conference up in Glasgow, and United Welsh were there as delegates, and that's when it was Adam from United Welsh who approached me, because it was initially just connectivity for the boilers, and it was nothing to do with digital inclusion whatsoever. They got these fancy smart boilers, and they just needed the connectivity for them. And the boiler company that was that had got the contract, they were taking them down this rather mediocre method of connectivity for the boilers, which I doubt would work very well. And so Adam wanted to change that project to it so that the boilers connected via Wi-Fi instead. And as a perk, everybody got Wi-Fi for their own devices as well. That new site is in an area with Virgin Media, so the service is very fast. It also means that the residents can tap into having a Virgin Media service if they want to, just like they could tap into an OpenReach service like TalkTalk or Sky or BT or whatever. They're free to have their own services if they want. It's just that there's a super cheap Wi-Fi network that they can have as an option too. The security is that on that particular development, every house and apartment has got its own Wi-Fi access point, and it's set up in a way in which they've got their own unique networks. So flat one has got a flat one Wi-Fi, just like your own Wi-Fi's at home right now. In each of your homes, you can connect your devices to them, and you could connect printers, and you could drag and drop files across computers within your household. They've got, every one of them have got that. So that means they've got their own passwords, and it means that the people next door can't tap into the devices of their neighbours. Whereas normally what's more common is that a Wi-Fi network that's probably been retrofitted, is that we'll have the access points probably dotted around the site, and several properties will be sharing the access points. And that means that it'll be more set up like a hotel's Wi-Fi network, in that you're not going to have the capability to see other devices across the networks. It'll be firewalled, and in order to retain the security. In both instances, we don't have any access to passwords, the websites they visited, their usernames, or anything like that. It's just simply not part of the system. We cannot see where they visited. We can report on what kind of activity they've been up to, and so the activities are in categories. So it'd be activity will be labeled as Netflix or other video streaming, or it'll be social media, but it won't be www. such and such. It'll just be an actual kind of activity that they've got up to. And so that's what we provide the reports to United Welsh each month, just to show them how the networks are being used. They will show how the usage of the smart boilers. Obviously, that's not much. They're just little ones and zeros just trickling through. It's not like there's videos and audio going across the boilers. But yeah, it shows that the boilers are being used.
Okay, so for those who've joined us, Rob is from Social Telecom, a community interest company. I think that's fair to say, is it? That specialises in communal Wi-Fi, particularly in social housing, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it worth we maybe just talking about what you typically do with social housing? Presumably this is in England and other parts of Wales.
Yeah, so we're based in Shrewsbury and Glasgow. Shrewsbury is the head office, and we've been supplying telecoms and data to the social housing sector for 20 years now. But for the last 8 years, we've been a social enterprise with a social mission to help with the digital divide. We're a social enterprise because we only sell to social housing providers and councils. So to set us up as a like-minded organisation is obviously a no-brainer. So the last 8 years, we've been using our telecoms and IT expertise to help with the digital divide. And we've now got Wi-Fi networks all over the UK. The reason we got a Glasgow office is such as the trade up there in Scotland. Plus it's a long way away, whereas Wales is just on our doorstep. So we tend to operate out of Shrewsbury for the trade that we've got out of Wales so far. We've got knocking on towards 600 Wi-Fi networks now all over the country, and they're all in social housing. We're getting north of 30,000 devices. Well, we were before lockdown. In February, before lockdown, we peaked at our highest yet, and it was 32,000 devices in a month. But then visitors stopped, were banned. People were banned from having visitors. And so the devices now are more around about 25,000 devices each month. But usage has obviously gone up because people have been housebound.
What are the typical models then that you do? Is it that sort of individual Wi-Fi for blocks, or is it communal Wi-Fi?
Yeah, so generally they are, out of the nearly 600 networks, around about half of them are flood fill, what we call flood fill. And that means we'll design and install a Wi-Fi network that has coverage within every apartment, every room within every apartment. So it's similar to what you just have at home. Residents have got their own Wi-Fi networks everywhere. Whereas the other 50%, probably less than just under 50%, is they're just communal lounges. And they tend to be installed where the budget hasn't stretched to do the flood fill. There's certainly facts and stats to show that the usage and uptake of Wi-Fi networks increases out of proportion if it's a flood fill network rather than just communal lounges. When people have got their own privacy, they use it a lot more. So it's so yeah, that's our model.
Do you mind if I ask a question? A couple of questions. A couple of questions I wanted to ask. So, Rob, so the systems that you use, obviously, I'm assuming you haven't gone and put up your own broadband network. So I'm assuming you piggyback on the back of some particular network. Do you choose a variety of systems to use, or do you use one particular network over another?
Yeah. So there's two aspects to the performance of a Wi-Fi network. One is the actual Wi-Fi coverage, and the other one is the broadband capacity that everybody's sharing. And your questions tapped into the latter there. And so for any specific site, not customer, any specific site, we'll look to see what broadband products are available. So I mentioned that the new road development in Rumney is in the Virgin Media area. And so if Virgin Media is available, it's actually plan A. There's no need to look for a plan B, because Virgin Media provides a lot of capacity. Basically they're very fast for the money. And so a lot of bang for your buck with Virgin Media. So that means that we'll hook up a site to Virgin Media. The aim is to have just one Virgin Media service shared by the 20 odd apartments and houses at that new road development. And so yeah, if urgent media is not available, then we're looking at the OpenReach based services.
So do you have a backup in case any of those cable technologies go down? So like a backup 4G service or something like that?
That can be provided, but it's not really viable. 4G is just it's not suitable. We can't have a development of 20 properties suddenly kicking in using a SIM card. You see, because
I think if you come to the Rhondda Valleys, you might have slightly more difficulties when it comes to cable services.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, what was I going to say? If it was about the smart tech that United Welsh have been piloting, and you needed the connectivity all of the time, it makes sense to have that resiliency. And then so we can put in ADSL, we can put in 4G, 3G. You know, we can put in all those resiliency measures to make sure that the smart tech can be connected all of the time. And we can do the same for people's home Wi-Fi networks as well. We can do that, but it's probably not worth the risk of having a bunch of Netflix films suddenly blasted across a SIM card because the bill is going to be high at the end of the month. So that's not really recommended. So for the sites, we would look to see what broadband product is available. It's actually quite rare that we come across a site that doesn't have some FTTC available. I'm not saying that they don't exist. There are some out there. There are even some areas in the great big urban cities that just don't have fibre yet. But every now and again we'll come across them. I'm
sure Andrew from Trevalis will probably give you an idea of kind of the levels of network capacity and problems that we have in Trevalis throughout the whole of RCT. And that, we do have a variety. We do have areas that work very well with fibre, and then we have some areas that still have got little to no coverage whatsoever. I think it just depends on how rural some of them are. There's a lot of rural areas around here that will still struggle with that kind of capacity.
I can imagine Sue Thomas.
I do understand what you're saying.
Could probably trump you on that. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, we've definitely got no-go areas. There's nothing at all, to be honest. So we're a long way down the line, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So one thing I just wanted to ask to Emma. Sorry to interrupt again. One last question. So you're talking about the smart boilers that you have installed. So is there a management centre that looks after all of the information that you get from there? Are you having to pay a service charge to that particular management place to sort of monitor that information that comes from the smart boilers, or is it all done through your service provider?
Well, at the moment, our asset management subsidiary, Celtic Horizons, they monitor that. I mean, it's not in any sort of structured way at the minute, and this is part of the learning of the pilot, is understanding how we can improve that. So at the moment it is ad hoc, but that's something that we're looking at for any future rollout.
I know the smart boilers exist, Vale of Glamorgan Council use them, and they're even to the extreme of, if you don't let the person in for the annual service, you have something like 7 days and it knocks itself off. They can switch the boiler off if you don't allow someone in to do the maintenance, because it's that smart, effectively. So it's not used. I must point out, Vale don't generally do that, but there's some advantage to this sort of stuff, and we can put you in touch with Vale if you want to speak to them. Can I ask I suppose a controversial subject is, in terms of do they have a free access, the trinity of, let's be honest, the things that are controversial on communal Wi-Fi, the trinity of porn, gambling and streaming like Cody and stuff, they're in their own home. Do you allow that type of stuff? Or I'd imagine if you're a Methodist Housing Association, you might have an issue with gambling sites, but is it for them, for the landlord to provide that restrictions, and where do you go with it? Rob, do you get many people with restrictions?
No, it's quite rare actually. We can do it, but most of the time, the customer will just give the end user free rein of what they want to do.
Yeah.
It's firstly that if you guys are not regarded as an ISP or even a Wi-Fi service provider, you're neither. There are terms and conditions that you can apply to the use of the Wi-Fi network, and the resident will see that each time they log on a device. And just like you would in like a Starbucks or a hotel, you have to adhere to the T's and C's before you connect. And
can I just add something there? That we've had an experience previously where we put some Wi-Fi in a sheltered scheme. And unfortunately for us, there was a large communal room and they had their own rooms and the Wi-Fi was valid. You could use it in any of those spots. But we had a particular individual who quite enjoyed using accessing porn in the communal room on a regular basis, even though he could use it in his flat. So no matter how much we did that to be able to say, no, you can't do this, or you can't do, that's something that he chose to do. And it was really difficult for us to drill it down to find out who the individual was who was doing it, because obviously this isn't monitored down to that level. And then to be able to work out and what we did from there, because it was like well, I'm an adult in my own home, I can do what I want sort of thing. So it was difficult for us to be able to drill down to who the individual was. So that was a difficulty for us, I know that. And we ended up removing the Wi-Fi from the communal area because it was just persisting all the time and there was nothing we could do about it. But that was just our experience in a 55 plus complex.
Yeah, we've got Wi-Fi in our communal lounge and computers, but they have the same restrictions as staff, so it's on the same sort of network. And so there are certain sites that we as staff would be blocked on. So looking at Amazon at 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever, but those safety mechanisms are in for everybody using the communal lounge in our sheltered scheme. So that's how it works with us.
Okay.
If I could just come in on that, actually. I mean, when there's a facility to use this service in a communal area, then you've got to question what's reasonable. And certainly looking at pornographic material in a communal area, well, there is two sides to it, I suppose, in the sense that there's a housing management issue in that respect. Doing it in a communal area, the individual. The point I'm trying to make is it's talking with the individuals and the use of it as well. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to, come across and say, yeah, I do this at the next thing. But if they are part of that instruction of that service and understanding the T's and C's and what, our expectations are in terms of the service and be open and honest and having that sort of trusted relationship around that, then I feel that it will help with some of those issues, not all the time. I think we are talking about exceptional circumstances essentially here, because I certainly haven't come across that with the services that we've had. But involving the person in the beginning of what we're trying to achieve and how this service can improve their lifestyle and whatnot, I think there's something in that. I mean, the communal area stuff, it's difficult, isn't it? And, I dare say it's a challenge for housing officers to manage that as well. But, there is the point that David's making that they are in their own home. Yeah. So it's that reasonableness conversation, having that with the tenant.
Yeah. So is
I just ask about retrofitting, because quite a lot of feedback we get from tenants is, everything's wonderful in new developments. Here's me in my old flat. We're still waiting for things, and quite common theme. So how easy is it, or is it to retrofit in an old block of flats? So all tenants have got access rather than just those in new developments?
New developments, a typical project with us is that it'll all pretty much be desktop based for us for most of it. We design the network from the plans, and then we'll give instructions to the building contractor as to how we need the cable to be installed for us. And then we just cruise in at the second fix stage when the walls are nicely painted, and then our engineers are there for a day or two fitting in the gear on the ends of all the cables that are there waiting for us. A retrofit project is completely different. We'll survey the networks, the sites. So our engineers will visit. They come away with a network design, which is costed up and proposed to you guys. But what's different here is that we're going to be on site for a week. Well, that's a big mug. We're there on we're there for a week or two or three. maybe if it's a humongous site, it'll be 4 weeks, because our engineers will be running the cable for all of our network gear around the whole site. How the network looks and how it's designed, really, we define that at the survey stage. Can we fit one access point in a corridor for 2 apartments to share, or 3 apartments to share? That would mean it's a much better value project for you. Or perhaps those walls are too thick. The radio won't go through them. I'm sure you've all got some walls in your own homes where Wi-Fi goes weak. So walls are a major obstacle for us. And so if we can't put an access point in a corridor for 2 or 3 apartments to share, we may have to put them within the properties. For each, so there's a ratio of 1-to-1 access points to property. So that turns into a bit of a bigger project then.
There's a cost implication to retrofits by the sounds of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So vast majority of our nearly 600 networks are retrofitted. We're involved more and more in new builds all of the time, and but retrofitting is what keeps us very, very busy. And generally, if it's a shelter scheme, what we found is that corridors have got suspended ceiling, say, and that makes it very easy for us to cable, compared to somewhere that's more probably general needs will have a plasterboard ceiling, and so we'll then be running trunking everywhere, which takes longer. But we've got a method for helping customers decide whether it's really a viable project to go with. Firstly, our model is that the network is all bought and paid for by the housing association, and then it's up to the housing association to decide whether they want to get back those capital costs over a period of time of, say, multiple years, say 5-10 years, something like that. And so that's what they'll add a figure to the rent or the service charge to get those costs back. So we help work out what those costs would be over, and I do it over 10 years because that's what some housing associations have done. And so there's this figure that's created that says how much the monthly cost is per property to have this Wi-Fi service, and it'll probably be around about £5 or £6 or £7, and that price will creep higher up per month if the more complex the more complex the network. Generally, the larger the development, the lower the price becomes. But the more complex networks, the price will creep up. And so if you're talking £5, £6, £7, £8, £9, £10 per month over 10 years, and that includes all costs, including maintenance and the monthly broadband charge that people share, then it helps understand that project is a viable thing to do, because home broadband if it's the cheapest, is going to be around £20 always. And so it helps show that the project is going to be good for the residents who already have home broadband. They can make savings of hundreds of pounds straight away. But it also brings digital inclusion to the people who don't have it yet. Yeah. Those residents that are in a scheme in a shelter scheme that don't have the broadband because they don't feel they want it, they don't need it, and they've got by their whole life, why do they need it now? They come out with phrases like that. But if it's there, they got the freedom just to tap into it without having to dabble with having an 18-month contract with TalkTalk at £20 odd a month.
Can I just ask a question off the back of that?
Yeah.
So if someone did have internet in their own property before this, how easy would it be for that resident to switch and join the communal Wi-Fi? Would they be tied into a contract? Like you've just said, if there's an 18-month contract and they're midway through it, would they still have to let their personal contract run before they could then? Yeah,
they'll be in contract there. They'll be in contract for the remainder of that term.
Okay.
And we can't meddle with that. But what they're going to have, if they're halfway through a 12-month contract, say, and they've got 6 months left, then for 6 months they do have both services. Now, what we're going to find is that they're probably going to carry on using their TalkTalk or Sky service for 6 months, because why wouldn't you? You're paying for it, it's there. But it also means they can dabble with with your Wi-Fi service that you're providing with us, and it means that they can use it in the corridors, in the gardens, in the communal lounges. They can commence an EastEnders episode in their lounge, get up and walk around holding their phone, watching EastEnders down the corridor, into the communal lounge, out into the garden, and sit on the bench, and the EastEnders will carry on running, and they wouldn't be able to do that with their TalkTalk service.
Yeah.
So they'll consider that as being maybe a little bit of a minor perk, that they can move around and get Wi-Fi, watch their EastEnders everywhere. And so 6 months comes along and they decide, I don't need this. Hello, £20 a month, I'll save you, and just carry on using ours.
Typically, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I put a question in the chat about, because I joined late, so apologies for that. You could have said all of this, but the cable that you lay, is it cable to cabinet, or is it fibre to cabinet, or fibre to
it depends what's available. So generally a retrofit Wi-Fi network's going to be FTTC, but that's because FTTC is Openreach's chosen method to get fibre everywhere retrospectively, whereas all new builds, Openreach will provide fibre to be used to the premises. So we pick whichever is the best value service for each.
What about Hyperoptic?
Hyperoptic are a company that provide a fibre to the premises network in a similar way to Virgin Media. So Openreach, Openreach, Hyperoptic, Virgin Media, City Fibre. There's 4 examples of organisations that are rolling out fibre to the premises. Openreach obviously are by far the biggest. Now, Hyperoptic are probably the smallest, but where they put fibre, if it's there, we'll nab it. We'll have it. We don't pick and choose. We'll have a Hyperoptic service. If it's there, we'll have a Hyperoptic service over an Openreach one probably any day of the week.
So quality-wise, Hyperoptic is the better option.
If it's there, yeah, because we'll put in a business Hyperoptic connection, and you'll get one. I think their gigabit FTTP service is around about £60-ish a month, something like that.
Yeah.
We tap into Hyperoptic up in Glasgow where it's available.
So the individual home then, so each flat that you're connecting up, what would typically be the speed that each flat is connected to? What are they getting?
Okay.
So if they're doing Netflix and whatever else, what?
Yeah. Keyword there is Netflix, because a lot of people like to use it, and it's a way of life now, isn't it, Netflix? And so we'll be selecting a broadband service that will provide enough capacity for people to Netflix. And so we know that Netflix needs 5 megabits for full HD streaming. That's what their website says. So you only need 5 megabits per stream. So we're aiming to provide 7, because we go a little bit higher than that. We provide a minimum of 7 megabits per device. So this is what Wi-Fi network is coverage. It's spreading over a site. We're not going to say that apartment has 10 megabits. They all get 10 megabits each. We're actually picking on devices, because we don't actually know really where a device is. So we're picking on actual devices. So each device can have 7 megabits. So if you're an apartment with 5 devices, then you've got 35 megabits technically. But so that's our aim. Now, if it's an apartment block that's got FTTC, or maybe we won't cover it if it doesn't have FTTC as a minimum. I can get to that later if you want. But if there's FTTC, we'll work out how many of those services we need in order to meet a minimum requirement of 7 megabits per device. It generally is for, if it's an apartment block for the over 55s, then it's generally more often than not only going to need one FTTC service. But we're reactive to that, because we analyse the usage and we'll talk to you about whether a second FTTC service is needed. If it's Virgin Media, it's actually, or hyperoptic, it's generally there's going to be enough capacity for everybody to have as much fun as they like online, and we don't have to get stressed over whether there's enough. So we won't go setting everybody's speed to 7 megabits if it's hyperoptic or Virgin Media there, or an OpenReach FTTP one. We'll uplift it to 10, 15, 20, 25. We got a formula that works out what we're going to set it to, and that goes into our proposals at an early stage. In fact, it goes. We can tell you what speed people will get when we're even at the indicative cost stage, which is before proposals and surveys. So so it's so 7 is what we aim for, because we know people want a Netflix.
Cool. Can I, before we get into too much technical side, I've got a couple of slides that were just taking it back a little bit as to reasons to do this and reasons not to. I only whipped these together at 8 o'clock this morning, so people like Rob might not agree with some of these advantages and disadvantages, but I felt it was something, if some of you people want to take this forward, you might want some of the business case to be shared. So if I can just share something. As I say, don't shoot me if they're not all right. It was just to get us talking. Tell me when you can see something. It's always a bit of a delay on Zoom. Can you see anything yet? So I thought, what are the advantages of doing this to for a block, isn't it? And as Rob indicated, it's the cost to the tenant, isn't it? They're not looking at a landline. They're not looking at expensive contracts. You've got it down, between £6 and £10 or so. What would you say your average charges then, Rob?
So what was that last question at the end then?
About the cost to the tenant. That's got to be one of the advantages, isn't it?
We don't get involved with what the charge should be to the tenant, but we do help with them understanding what other housing associations, how they recharge. And so if there's if the Wi-Fi network costs £10,000 to install for a shelter scheme of 50 properties. And it's £50 a month. For the broadband that they share.
And even in this example with United Welsh, they were able to provide it for free, wasn't it? So
some HAs do that.
So there's a definite advantage of cost to the tenant there compared to each source in their own broadband contract, effectively.
What's actually common? Sorry, what's actually common though, but I didn't remember earlier, was whether the question that I had about contracts running down their respective Talks and Sky contracts. Then our customers will actually give away the Wi-Fi for free for 12 months because they're with one eye on those. Well, just for those residents that do have broadband, and it allows them to run it down without paying for 2 services.
Right.
It helps spread the appetite for the Wi-Fi network and close the digital divide amongst the people who don't use it yet. So they got it free for 12 months, and then everybody knows that 12 months later, a charge is going to be kicking in for £5, £6, £7, £8, £9, £10 a month or whatever it is.
So there's definitely something there about cost, affordability of an individual contract. You're committing to 2 years. The contract length itself, because we have a certain amount of mobility in social housing, people coming into temporary accommodation, people moving on, committing to that contract is difficulty for some people, or with credit ratings as well. So, and there's something about buying more capacity than they need. I think my auntie is in Trevallish sheltered scheme, and she had her contract, and they came with far more capacity than she would ever need for what she was using it for. It just was the smallest capacity that the provider did, And there's something there, I think, about ease of setup, I think it's fair to say. If you're if it's provided by the building and you're just then connecting devices via Wi-Fi, that's got to be easier than having a broadband home setup built and your router and everything else. There's more things to worry about. And as I think Emma's already talked about, that sort of wearables, Internet of Things, technology being enabled by having a digital home is something there for the... so from a tenant perspective, do we agree or disagree with these, or anything else we'd add to it? Anybody?
I think, David, it's important to recognise, we're going to likely to see more and more people either working or learning from home. So it's around supporting that, work, employment, training, personal resilience. I think it's interesting. Public Health Wales are saying, having access to Wi-Fi and broadband is going to be increasingly important for people to access health services in the future as well. So I think there's
good points,
not just the well-being, but it's also about employability. People are going to be needing to work from home. There's no good going for an interview and you say, well, I can't log on for that interview. Yeah. So I think there's other wider benefits for tenants as well.
Yeah, that's good. I'll add that in.
I can just add to that. No, sorry.
I was going to say, my organisation, I imagine all of the organisations represented here are all driving towards digital service delivery as well. So to me, I feel that as landlords, we have a responsibility to enable people to access, digital services, if that's what we're going to be driving people towards.
Yeah, I did have a second slide, which was the advantages to landlords. So thanks for queuing me up lovely there. The first one should have been advantages to the tenants. But I think for landlords here, digital inclusion agenda, delivering services digitally, as you were saying, one set of kits in the building, the staff visitor access as well. Presumably, Emma, when the staff are on site, they can tap into that network that's been provided.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arguably, it makes it a more attractive accommodation proposition. Maybe I was a bit fishing at that point, but and again, supporting the wearables, Internet of Things, the boiler tracking, all that type of stuff. And for me, if we have that sort of digital at home, certainly from a TPAS perspective, it allows that tenant engagement channel. I know Newydd have done a lot of this, where wardens checking in with people digitally now. They've been trying this and testing it. And I think that's a really interesting proposition for landlords and the traditional warden to be able to check in and engage with people, especially in self-isolation at the moment. So anything else people would put on there on advantages to the landlord? Are any of them a bit dubious? Attractive accommodation proposition?
David, I can't see that slide, but I'm just thinking of advantages.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking to myself, am I? There's no slide.
I can see the slide.
Oh, okay. I can see slide number 5, and but not as a slideshow.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
I was just going to say, I couldn't see what's on advantages to landlords, but there's obviously a cost benefit which may be on there, because if you said, for someone to visit your home, to come and do something, as compared to somebody self-serves and reports something online, considerable, financial savings per interaction with the landlord as well.
Okay. And the convenience of it, I think, we're living in a world now where, things being convenient and certainly reporting repairs, and to be able to do that all on your phone. And certainly if you think about the market generally, we do a lot of transactional, communication via our phone digitally, as it is. So it's almost like we're playing a little bit of catch up here as well. And, I think for landlords, being able to do a lot more digitally, those transactional sort of services, allows us to send people where it's actually needed to have those face-to-face conversations, and to be able to, really spend more time and deliver more meaningful well-being services elsewhere.
Yes, I agree.
For us, we recently did a survey, and we had 550 responses, of which just over 400 were via paper. And now it's made us question, was it paper by choice, or was it paper response because they didn't have the online facilities? So I'm wondering as well with this, would that make it a lot easier to analyse those results? Because obviously we've now got a customer services team. We're having to data enter over 400 responses that normally would, be quick online. So I'm also wondering, that's something we need to look at. Was it 400 responses by choice, or was it because they didn't have the internet or confidence to do it?
Yes.
If I could just say something on that, did you send it out via paper? Because if you sent it out via paper, then there's an expectation that it's returned via paper. So for us, it was a reflection on us, how we are communicating outwardly as well. And, for instance, I used rent collection earlier. We were still sending rent collection letters out, physical letters. Whereas if we tested stopping that completely and using more digital means, it would sort of give a different option, a different, way in which to communicate with us as well on that, digitally. So it's made us really look at our, all of our communication channels, but giving a bit more choice to people as well.
I think for us, the difficulty is that we cover general needs, support and care. So for some of our customers, we have to make sure that we're still sending out the paper, because they may have somebody else who's completing on their behalf and want to do it with them and that paper. So it's a little bit of a difficulty, but we would love to be able to do what you're doing and send it out digitally and say, if you want another format, let us know, but the first preference is digital. Maybe it's something worth trying.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not a digital by default sort of organisation. I know DWP and various other agencies have gone, right, it's digital or nothing. We're definitely not like that. I think what we are trying to do more of is provide more choice. And so, but that's why I was saying, those people who are comfortable with those more transactional interactions with us digitally, we can afford to allow that to enable us to work more with people who aren't as digitally savvy, to respond in, and to work through how they can communicate with us more digitally. So
certainly an advantage for landlords is that, this helps towards the channel shift agenda, doesn't it? That if you are looking to provide more services online, by having online there on tap effectively, it means that, you've got the means to be able to do that. Whereas the barriers with regards to costs and other things, if you're going down the broadband route, or even the routes, that you've got people with, bad credit histories who struggle to get, a monthly contract to have a broadband provider providing, and then they're relying on telephone. So, which is again more expensive. It's the more costly option if they're going on, pay by card or whatever, prepay. So, there is an enormous benefit to landlords in helping that channel shift agenda, isn't there?
I agree. I put some, I don't know if people can actually see my slides. I did put some questions, whether these are downsides. I'm sure Emma and Rob might be able to bust these myths, but there's something about, obviously, retrofitting costs more, doesn't it, as we've already established. There's the investment cost and the return. If the landlord's going to put that money up first, will they get that return over the time, and will tenants pay it? And there's some more here, your classic, Big Brother watching.
Want me to run through those?
Sorry? Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Retrofit costs, then. I've already mentioned we're going to be on site more often. We're going to be there a week or two installing them, whereas a new build, we'll be there only a day or two. But so a new build proposal from us will be less than a retrofit model. But then a new build, the electrical subcontractor of the building contractor will do all the cabling, so they may increase their price for doing all that cabling.
Sure.
Retrofit generally most of the time, apartments and houses will share access points, so it makes it a super good value. Whereas what we're finding in new builds is that it's the latest trend to put foil-lined insulation in all the walls, because foil reflects heat. It keeps people nice and cozy, stops the heat escaping outside. But then if it reflects heat, it's going to reflect radio waves too, and so that means the Wi-Fi doesn't go through those walls very well at all. And that means apartments can't share the Wi-Fi access points that we put in the corridors, and that's why we put them inside the properties. So that means new builds may well have twice as many access points as a retrofit site. So swings and roundabouts. Investment cost versus returns. I've mentioned that the savings for residents, are quite substantial. All Wi-Fi networks, whether it's retro or new build, it's going to be really. It's an expensive one if it's £10 a month to them, including VAT. It's expensive, that one. They generally to be a lot less. I think the cheapest we've ever had is around about £3 something or other, just £3 something per property per month, including VAT. Absolute steal, that is. Tech kit being outdated, not really. It's the kit we're putting in is current and future proof, really. I mean, Wi-Fi is always going to evolve, but I don't want to sound too techie right now, but most people are using their devices are still using. This is I don't want to get too techie, but they're still using the Wi-Fi technology that's 15 years old. It's wireless N, it's called, but that's been replaced by AC wireless. And there's even newer versions of that, but all Wi-Fi tech, when it comes out, finds itself in the very expensive smartphones and tablets first, and then trickles its way down to the more affordable devices, generally when those devices get cheaper and older. But the 15-year-old wireless tech that everybody most of the time are using right now, that's not going to be phased out for the time being. So I don't see our tech being outdated whatsoever.
No, fair enough. These are just things I was trying to think of. What would people say?
Well, our Wi-Fi access points are dual band, which means that they're good for legacy devices and they're good for expensive, flashy ones as well.
One thing I would just say quickly on that, though, in terms of kit, if you're providing a communal Wi-Fi facility, you need to be clear on what you're actually offering as well, because what we found is some people don't have devices to access the technology. So it's ensuring that you've got, like I said, that infrastructure and knowing people who perhaps could provide. I know Wales Co-op have got a division that they are enabling some, sections of community to be able to access kit as well. So, it's not just looking at this in isolation, it's understanding that journey of the customer, I suppose, of how they would access it themselves.
Okay.
I think it's important, actually. That's a really good point. And I'm leading on a project, and it is looking at infrastructure and also looking at inclusion, device loans, and that sort of thing. It's everything together, isn't it? When you're looking at this, really. So I think
it's the training. Because we can make a lot of assumptions that people know how to use, how to even access the internet, the internet connection and different things, or use their device. But until you start really, chatting with people, understanding what their digital capacity is as well, would help you understand what your offer can be, because it can get quite big as well, can't it, for landlords? So
when we did we do a star survey every 3 years with all of our tenants, and one of the challenges was lack of access to the internet. Some people didn't have equipment, and some people just not interested, or not interested in learning how to use equipment even. So it's nice to offer these options, but we mustn't assume that digital is the answer to everything.
I know we've got a sort of like a preferred method of communication sort of thing that we're going to roll out, in terms of, some people want to knock on the door, some people want a phone call, some people are happy to default to digital and do everything that way. So it just goes back to knowing your customer base, I guess, in terms of what their communication preference is.
And what they don't know as well. Sorry, I was just saying, because they might not even recognise that being on their phone is being able to communicate digitally as well. So it's being quite simple and clear on the different things that you're trying to achieve as well. So
no, that's the point I was going to make, Emma. Sometimes it's the language we use, isn't it? Asking people, are you digitally included? Have you got access to digital? And they'll probably say no, but they're all probably on Facebook that night doing things. So perhaps it is something to do with the language as well, and perhaps explaining what we mean by inclusion and digital accessibility.
We got one of our housing association customers they've developed an Alexa skill for Amazon Echoes.
Oh, cool.
And it's quite nifty. And so the online videos on YouTube that are showing it off, it just has the residents sat on their sofa, and they'll go say Alexa, and they'll say Housing Solutions, which is the name of the landlord, and then they'll say, can I book a repair, or can I discuss my rent, or can I speak to somebody, or etc. And Alexa will organize all of that. The Alexa lady will say what rent is, what the rent is, or they'll ask questions about what the repair is needed, and they'll which is all quite fancy. But the Housing Solutions, their thinking is that it'll cut down all of their costs for running their contact center, fielding all of those calls, because the system will tap into the housing management and all of the other back-end systems and organize appointments and just cut down all the work.
That makes you very happy, David, doesn't
I know.
it?
The reason I was saying is I did a webinar
last 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was last October or September. I did a webinar on Alexa and how it can work with housing. And we looked all around the world, in the US, and the sort of things that people can do with it. And councils can do amazing stuff. Liverpool was the one that really stood out for me as doing really clever stuff with council services and Alexa. So it's on our website. Anyone wants to download it, and there's a webinar you can rewatch on it. But I think, thanks, Rob. And a lot of people using them, they weren't really aware that was digital. It was just using the Alexa to find out what day the black bags were collected and things like that. They just thought it was some clever magic.
There's a house down in Cardiff that's been put together by a company that's done something quite similar, using Alexas and various different sort of screen, the ones with the screens and all sorts of stuff. And they've done it using off-the-shelf products, because obviously you can get a company to come in and set all this up for you, but they've done it using off-the-shelf products to set up this house so they can use command words to lock all the doors, which also then switches off the gas. So it's for supported housing. And so there's a lot of technology out there that is, and things in there to support all of this that's already out there. There's a lot of companies out there that do these sort of things, but the cost is massive. And when you actually look at breaking it down, you're supplying a couple of Alexas and monitoring it, and then you've got charging us how much. So I think there's a lot of stuff out there that is already in the market for us to have these digital work in place in a lot of our schemes. But when we've looked at it, the cost element has been way too expensive, and we've even got our own IT department that look into sort of whether or not they can put something together similarly. And I think that's kind of where a lot of us are going now, because of the cost, because we've got to pass that cost on to our tenants. From a service charge perspective, you can't even get them to pay for a new laundry or a new washing machine, let alone a broadband connection. So it is a really difficult thing, certainly, that we've come across. We have tried and we have looked at these things before, and it will come, because modern technology is sort of marching forward, and as things get cheaper, it will become a bit more easier, I think. But I think one of the main stumbling blocks that a lot of us will have, especially as we're all in this pandemic process where rents have dropped and we're all in a position where collecting rents is difficult. The budgets and funding that we're going to have available to us is probably not going to return to anywhere near normal for at least 12 to 18 months, if not longer in some instances. That is going to be the biggest stumbling block I think all of us are going to encounter is cost, and how do we mitigate against that? Yes,
but I think that's part of that digital inclusion can save the meetings. I know they might be in the room here, but there's certainly a housing association that was having tenant participation meetings where they were taxiing in somebody probably 50, 60 miles, to come to a meeting. And the cost of that is huge, and at some point you'd be better off giving them a tablet, and, joining via a digital method. And so certainly some of the digital groups that, we've managed to reduce our cost base because we've got not enough income coming in at the moment. And we can run things like this for free. And whereas normally we'd have hired a room and budget coffee and buffet and everything else. So I think the digital agenda can help save some of this money as we go forward,
Yeah, I think this has made us sort of look at things in different ways, and we've had virtual meetings with our tenant group, and where people haven't got access to the internet or tablets, then they're just dialing into the meetings. And what we do is we have a meeting after about 55 minutes, we break. So if they are on BT, they're not going to incur any costs. They hang up and they dial back into the meeting afterwards. And that's, we started very informally because everybody's got to learn the protocol for these sort of meetings. But we had our first one last week and it went quite well. So I don't think it'll completely replace our meetings, but at least it keeps the momentum going during this time and keeps our tenants engaged and interested and involved, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for organisations to be really holistic in how they look at those costs as well. And most organisations, I think, they can be quite siloed in how they look at things. So if the parameters of what you're looking at is this, then it might not be cost effective. But actually, if you look beyond that and look at the wider benefits that you could potentially glean, then that can really skew things and make things more viable than they initially appear.
I absolutely agree. I think Harvard did some really innovative stuff when they brought their app out. They gave quite a large incentive that caused a bit of a discussion in the sector about how much incentive people could get to start using the app. And I was one of them going, interesting. But actually, you see the Harvard business case, which is, the cost of a repair, cost of the call center, cost of everything. And you get people using that app, and you may have had to incentivize them to use it in the first place. But the cost benefits was far, far bigger than any Amazon vouchers, was it, I think?
Yeah, we were giving away £10 Amazon vouchers to everybody who signed up.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that, and for some of the customers ongoing, then if you were to update your next of kin details or your contact information, you'd be put into a prize draw and pulled out for that as well. So it was a really good response. And at the moment, with our scrutiny panel members, some of them didn't have, like Emma was saying, they don't always have the equipment that they need. So we've given, for two of them who didn't, we've given them iPads, and that was less than what we spent in one meeting in their taxis getting them there.
Yes. And we're seeing that all across Wales. It's not a permanent solution, but even as TPAS board, we used to meet Pan Wales, and for one member who didn't have the kit, it was cheaper to buy him a £90 tablet just to use Zoom on. It's not going to do much else, but it'll do Zoom, and that it was so it's that bigger figure, isn't it? As United Welsh have done, I think it's amazing that they were looking at it as a boiler project, and they will return, save money on that, but also the tenants could get something free out of it as well at the same time. And I think that's
especially like what I'm thinking for us, the customer side of it can also use the app. If they've got that internet, then they'd be more likely to use the app to keep their information up to date, change the next of kin, view their rent statements. We're having a few even compliments that are coming through the app that we didn't expect.
Okay.
So there's some nice things that are coming through, especially around COVID. So it's getting people familiar with using it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about business overview is so crucial, and what we've been historically sort of resorting to previously is that silo working. I think what my role has afforded United Welsh is that overview of what this looks like as a business and what we actually want to do, and what the pandemic has given us is a common purpose for that as well. So these digital forms of communication now, we've had to do it. So to not use this as an opportunity to really have a look within our own organisations as to what this can bring would be a wasted opportunity. So for us now, we are looking at that, bigger picture like you've described, and understanding the different, ways in which we can take that forward.
think as well, moving forward, you know, the Welsh Government already looking at WHQS, whatever, 2, 3, are we on 2? And, you know, I predict probably something likely in there around provision of broadband facilities as well in properties, whether it's new or retrofit. So it may come eventually that way through the Welsh Housing Quality Standard as well. So something definitely to consider.
Yeah, I sense that as well from them, that there'll be something in the next version. Yeah. Okay, so we're in the last 15 minutes. Is there anything anyone particularly wants to ask or make a point on, or anybody who hasn't spoken? Joanne made a point about the environmental benefits as well of this type of stuff, you know, in terms of paper reduction as well. I think that's really important, you know.
The other thing on that point, oh, sorry.
And so, Emma, I was just going to ask a sort of practical question, really, because we know how notorious some broadband providers are around customer service when there's a problem, whatever. Does that impact on you as an organisation? I mean, is there potential where your contact centre could be swamped because they think, oh, you're providing the broadband, it's not working, I'm going to be ringing you up about it and asking for compensation because I couldn't do my work, whatever?
We haven't had any experience of that. I think we had one fault reported during the 18 months that we've had the service. And to be fair, it was resolved pretty quickly. The other was just to inform us that there were issues with the broadband from social telecoms themselves, just for us to go down and, you know, switch off and on again the hardware. So it wasn't, we've not noticed an increase in, you know, issues around faults and things. One thing I was going to say, though, in terms of the environmental comment that was made, we're looking at decarb agenda and whatnot, and certainly with the smart boilers that we've put in, they are it's having that consideration in terms of the smart technologies available and what's coming in and the expectations on landlords as well. So for us, we're having to look again at the smart boilers because obviously gas not being an option in, you know, a deadline for that fast approaching, it's ensuring that we've got the right smart technology that's taking that agenda forward as well. So it's just to bear that in mind, really.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a couple of other people who wanted to speak. Maybe I should have said this at the beginning. Maybe some hands. I know Sue Thomas did it. She had her hand up. Good meeting etiquette. Anybody else want to say anything at this point? Or? No. Okay. I haven't got anything else more to say. Is anything, Rob or Emma, any final points you want to make or anything? Or?
I've got there's a spreadsheet just to show.
All right.
And it's the usage stats for the last few months of our Wi-Fi networks, and it offers a comparison between having communal areas compared to having it everywhere else. So,
okay,
if I have two or 3 minutes just to show that, perhaps.
Yeah, can you share, or have I got to make you admin? Let's have a look.
Just while you're doing that, we're always interested from TPAS what you yourselves get from events like this. So if you can use the chat, just tell us what you're going to do next. Are you going to go and talk to your directors? Are you going to actually go and talk to other people? Are you going to share the video or explore it a bit more? Or are you going to give Emma or Rob a ring? So if you can use the chat, just to give us a bit of a feel for what you've got from the session or what you might do next. We're always interested to know.
I'm just trying, Rob, I'm just trying to ditch David Lloyd as a co-host and trying to make you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You can share just without, because we lock that type down to stop people sharing anything inappropriate.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I might not be able to do this, I'm afraid.
No worries then.
Yeah.
Anybody using the chat to tell us what you're going to do next? We are interested because we do feedback to say what our members got from us. So if you're able to type something in there, that'd be really good. Yeah.
Can I just say something on that, actually? One thing I think is really important is having these opportunities to share to share our experiences and learn from each other. I think we're all in the same boat. We're all housing associations with the same, you know, pretty much the same purpose and responsibilities and whatnot. And so I'd be very happy if anybody wanted to quiz me outside of this webinar today, if they wanted to follow up with anything I have to reflect in. But certainly from my perspective as well, and our sort of objectives, to be able to learn from anybody else who's got anything, you know, that they've been working on that's related to this, and perhaps even pull that together in something that, you know, is more meaningful. Because nobody's got the perfect solution, you know, it's all a learning curve, isn't it? So yeah, I'd be happy to speak to anybody else outside of this.
I think, Emma, what might be good for you, if you link in with your EROS representative in United Welsh, because they also do a lot of similar sort of stuff to this kind of webinar. So obviously they meet every quarter and they talk about all sorts of different stuff. And this is obviously something that's really important when it comes to sheltered care, any of those kind of sort of, because obviously EROS is mainly aimed at sheltered accommodation care and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that they're working with. There's a lot of companies already that are already doing this kind of stuff. You know, we've got a lot of sheltered places and a lot of extra care facilities. I'm trying to think of the one up in Abraham that they've just built, which has got huge amounts of technological stuff already in place. So all the new builds they're looking to do. So I think there's a lot of work. Obviously, if you link in with your connection there with EROS, you should be able to get a lot more information that you can share here, as well as use it as a two-way network, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. That's a good point.
Brilliant. I think that's it. I thank you for coming for this. You can probably tell I'm not an expert on this. I just felt that it needed somebody to call a meeting to bring some people together. I hope you found it of use. And there is a recording of this, I believe. I got to figure out now what I'm going to do with it and put it on a private YouTube or something, but I'll get that to you at some point later today or tomorrow once I've figured it out. So thank you for coming today. I think, hope you found this of use.
Thanks for having us, David, and organising. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, just
thank you.
For those interested in moving their tenant engagement online, maybe putting meetings online, activities online, we are running a session similar to this one, probably in a way, just to share people's experiences of moving tenant engagement activities online as well. And that's going to be on Tuesday, 14th, I think, in the morning. So similar to this, we'll send something out. I'll try and get it out to you today or tomorrow. But if you've got any colleagues interested in thinking, how's it working? You know, Sue's just talked about today about they've moved it on, what works, what platforms work, hints and tips. You know, it's not training. This one isn't a training. It's, again, just a bit of sharing how people are doing that and their experiences over the last couple of months doing that, really.
Brilliant. Brilliant.